Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining our webcast this morning. I hope you're all well and safe in this difficult situation right now. We're going to have a webcast today on a corporate update and also the proposed equity capital raise that we announced yesterday. So we will be opening up the Q&A section, the Q&As afterwards. So after the presentation, you will be able to raise questions by using the raise hand button, which you will see at the bottom of your screen, or if you have a smartphone on the top. There's also the possibility to go and ask questions via typed question on the Q&A section. But now we're starting basically with the two topics. We will also be recording this presentation, and the presentation is also online available under investors and presentations for those people who are joining in by call. We have on the call today with us our CEO Artem Volynets, our CFO Chris Egger, and our COO Darren Cooper, and myself. And we will have two sections. The first one is basically an executive summary and a corporate update presented by Artem. And then we will jump into the financial update and also the opportunity, which will be covered by Chris. So I would like now to hand over to Artem for the first part. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Patrick, and thanks everyone for joining us. I'm Artem Volynets. I'm a CEO of Chaarat Gold. You can see on this page people who are present on the call today. As Patrick mentioned, that's Chris, our CFO, and Darren, our Chief Operating Officer. Behind me, you hopefully see our beautiful mountains in Kyrgyz Republic. That's where our Tulkubash and Kuzultash projects are. As Patrick referred to these difficult times and the times of the crisis, we firmly believe that any crisis brings us an opportunity. This is a big crisis, so opportunity is big as well. For us, first and foremost, this is opportunity to invest in Chaarat. All the people that you see on this page, all the management and all the board, and our key shareholder, Martin Anderson, all of us are investing in this round because we believe this is a very exciting story, and we invite our existing shareholders and new investors to participate with us in this growth, in what we believe in our ability to build one of the leading companies in gold production in the countries of the former Soviet Union. Next page, please. So why we believe that this is an exciting story? Well, simply, 2 years ago when I joined Chaarat, our shares were trading at around the same levels as they trade now post-COVID market sell-off. And at that time, Chaarat was probably one third of the company that we have today. We didn't have operating assets, we didn't have cash flows, we didn't have bankable projects, we didn't have the team with 400 years of mining experience, we didn't have the growth prospects, whether organic or M&A. Today, Chaarat is a platform extremely well positioned for building one of the leading companies in gold production in the former Soviet Union. We have 3 assets: operating asset in Armenia called Kapan with 50,000 ounces of production and $20 million in EBITDA. We have a well-defined bankable project post-feasibility study in Kyrgyz Republic called Tulkubash, that is 100,000 ounces once in production, and will quadruple our EBITDA when it's start producing in 2022. And we also have Kuzultash, which is a massive 5.4 million ounces ore body that is probably assigned a value of 0 in our today market cap. but has a very exciting development prospects with close to 4 grams per ton of gold resources. All in all, 10 million ounces of gold resources today, a clear path to grow our production to roughly 500,000 ounces within 5 to 6 years from these assets, and an ability to add as much from our M&A opportunities that we are reviewing. So Chaarat today is a well-defined platform that is well-positioned to take advantage of the opportunities presented to us by this crisis. And hence, we are not pausing for the virus to pass. We're moving ahead with full speed, and that is the reason for us doing this capital raise now. It's a great investment opportunity for all of us and the new investors and existing shareholders alike. As well, this gives us a possibility to continue working at full speed in growing Chaarat into a premier company. Next page, please. The numbers speak for themselves once we look at the specific numbers for our operations. Last year, we have delivered the results for Kapan, made significant operational improvements. We'll tell you a little bit more as we go to the specific Kapan slide. But the overall message is that despite the crisis and the COVID situation and lockdowns in the countries of our operations, we actually feel pretty comfortable with stability of our assets. Kapan continues to operate normally, with all the precautionary measures are taken. We continue to produce and sell concentrate and receive money for our sales. Tulkubash construction work continues, obviously at a slower pace versus before, but we're very much progressing, and most importantly, we are progressing with the project finance, which we now expect to complete in the second part of this year, with significant interest shown by several financial institutions. What is important, and at these times, all of our stakeholders are showing a strong and significant support to Chaarat, starting from our communities with whom we work closely to mitigate the impact of the virus and the lockdowns, to our shareholders. All the key shareholders are investing in this equity raise, to our debt holders, as our debt maturities has been postponed to enable the company to properly withstand any movements in the next months to come, and to the board and the management, as I mentioned, who all invest in this race, as we firmly believe in this exciting investment opportunity. Next page, please. Just a few words on us working together with our communities in addressing the challenges presented by the virus. We firmly believe that the core base for the stability of our operations is our integration and partnership with our communities in the places where we operate. We have done quite a bit from food and sanitizer deliveries to our villages in Chatkal Valley in Kyrgyz Republic, to buying tests in Kapan, renovating a building that can be used as a secondary hospital in Kapan, currently buying a lab test unit to be delivered to Kyrgyz Republic. And this is very important. In the time of like this, people come together, and only the strong relationship survive and can help the company and its people and our workforce and our community to move forward. And we're pleased to report that those relationships with the local communities that we've been cultivating for years are now demonstrating its good colors and the good culture that we have invested significantly in. Next page, please. A few words about each of our key existing assets. First of all, starting with Kapan. We acquired that just a year and a few months ago from Polymetal. Have been operating the asset last year, and the numbers speak for themselves. We have done significant operational improvements. Mill throughput is up 15%, metal production up 7%, recoveries are up 5%, all-in sustaining costs down 14%. And we see further opportunities for upside in this asset. We are currently reviewing our geology and our life of mine model, and looking closely at the east flank of the deposit. You could potentially extend that life of mine quite significantly and enable us to improve the mill throughput from 700,000 tons to close to 1 million tons over the next couple of years. So a great buy was for us, a test case for our M&A strategy, a test case for our ability to operate assets efficiently. We are pleased with the results for 1 year of operations, and we see further opportunities for the upside. Next page, please. In regards to Tulkubash, our project in construction in Kyrgyz Republic, we very much continue to progress at a slower pace as expected due to the country lockdown. So we had to move the first gold pour in 2022. The good news that CapEx estimates hasn't changed really, and moreover, we expect to be able to buy some of the things that we need for the project at good prices, given the current situation. Once in production, Tulkubash will produce close to 100,000 ounces of gold, delivering at $1,400 price, around $50 million in free cash flow. And obviously at today's prices, that is much higher financial results. A very profitable project, a simple one to complete. It's a heap leach operation. We are in advanced discussions with the project finance banks to complete that project finance in the second part of this year and be firmly on the path to completion of the construction in 2022. So overall, a small delay, but fundamentals are intact. And if anything, improved as I wouldn't talk about the gold price. It's for investors to judge where the gold price is heading. But what we see is impact on the cost side. For example, 26% of all-in sustaining costs for Tulkubash is in energy, primarily in diesel, and with the current low oil prices, that diesel prices are also will go down. And that will have a significant positive impact on our costs. We also see positive impact from the currencies devaluation in both Armenia and Kyrgyz Republic, as both currencies devalue versus US dollar. And obviously in both countries, majority of our low costs are denominated in local currencies. So we see positive impact on the bottom line from the current macroeconomic trends. Next slide, please. Our biggest resource base, Kızıltaş, 5.4 million ounces. One of the reasons we're doing what we're doing now is we want to make progress on this project so that the market recognizes its massive value potential. We are going to do metallurgy testing this year to determine the best process technology. We are not going to pause on this work because we want to bring this asset into production 5 to 6 years from now, as we currently plan. Next page, please. And finally, one other area of active work for us is M&A. We're making progress on that as well. This is a very important area for implementation of our growth strategy. And again, that's something that we're not going to pause with. And moreover, we do believe that the current environment presents some very interesting opportunities which we keen to take advantage of. So this is an overview of what Chaarat is today, how we are progressing. And I will pass over to Chris to talk about specific numbers and an investment opportunity as we see it. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Artem. So maybe starting on this slide, before I get into the highlights of the equity offering, just wanted to recap some of the transactions we completed in 2019 and also what we've been doing in 2020. Really with an understanding that the philosophy for the business is always to be maximizing our shareholder value and minimizing dilution to a point. So look, in 2019, the company raised well over $100 million of capital in order to progress the strategy. And I think as you'll see in the upcoming slides, that was reflective in our share price. So just to touch upon some of those capital raises, first of all, in February of last year, we closed a senior debt facility for $40 million in order to buy Capan. And since then has actually reduced that facility from 40 million down to 32 million as that facility is amortizing over time. And I think that's important because one of the key philosophies for the business is to bring down our debt levels to prudent numbers. The other key activities for last year was to close our convertible bond offering of around $20 million. We also upsized a high yield note facility from $10 to $17 million. We also looked at closing our asset sale of 12.5% to Shiftai for $30 million. And finally, we did two small equity raises of $9 million, very much opportunistically allowing certain shareholders an opportunity to enter into the story as such because our liquidity of our stock is not that high. And so these equity offerings facilitated the entry points for a number of investors. So pleased to say we've brought in some very attractive investors into the book. Since 19, obviously 2020 has been a more complicated year. If I just go back to 19, one of the key activities for the business was to refinance our existing debts because all of the debts that we have today in place have effectively been put in place when the company was in a pre-production state. As we have a good year of operations under the belt, the company has very much increased its credit quality. And typically what one would do after you have a year of production would be to refinance our facilities in order to drive down the cost of capital and possibly even enhance the facilities themselves. So we were actually well down the path of doing those things. However, with the COVID-19 situation, we've had to reevaluate how we think of our financial structure. So we were very active once COVID-19 took its full effect to work with our existing facilities to extend the maturities. And I'll go into more detail, but one of the key activities in 2020 was to actually extend our high yield note, which was due in March 31st to the end of the year. And we've also extended our Labro working capital facility from July to the end of the year. So maybe moving into the next page. When we think about the, no, one before, please. Sorry, we're jumping up ahead. Sorry, this page, thank you. So with regards to the offering that was announced yesterday morning, the company is looking to raise at least $12 million of an equity offering at 26p. This was announced yesterday morning and will be in place until the end of next week, the 24th. Very much the rationale for this offering is to provide investors an attractive entry point into the story, but from a use of proceeds will be to provide a liquidity buffer for the COVID-19 situation. But there are some very specific use of funds as highlighted on this page that I'll just walk through. Namely, first is to continue to develop the work at our Tokabash asset, first and foremost with progressing the construction in order to get the asset into first gold pour in 2022, but also to spend discretionary spending on drilling in order to further extend the mine life, which has been very value accretive to our shareholders. Also, as Artem highlighted, we plan to use some of the funds in order to develop Kyzyltash. Kyzyltash today within our portfolio, we believe receives very little value from an asset perspective, but is our largest asset with well over 5 million ounces. Thirdly, we plan to also use some of the cash to possibly execute a number of M&A transactions. As Artem highlighted, the M&A opportunities should become a lot more plentiful and a lot more, I would say, productive and fruitful for us within this time of crisis. And I think that as we have additional expenditures to make, we'll have the funds necessary for those expenditures. And finally, in line with what we've done at our senior debt levels, it makes sense to possibly reduce our debt because it is expensive debt to lower levels. And so depending on the cash that we receive from the equity raise, we may look to reduce the debt levels by a certain amount, but that is very much to be determined. When we think about the equity raise, as we talked about it before, we've raised 12 million to date at a share price of 26p. We're opening it up until the end of next week. We are sensitive to not having this equity raise be too large. We're actually very happy if we get 12, 13, 14 million. This is also very much an opportunistic capital raise, as we've done in the past. But one thing that I will note is that we are sensitive to the size. So we will most likely cap the equity raise so that it does not surpass more than 10% of our dilution on a pro forma basis. Now, speaking a bit more specifically of the equity raise, maybe to the next slide, please, Patrick. It really was built off of the activities that the company has done in the past few weeks off of the COVID-19 situation. So obviously, because of COVID-19 and because of how the company looks at managing its balance sheet and being very proactive in maintaining a prudent balance sheet and also maximizing our shareholder value, we quickly worked with our lenders to extend our existing facilities by at least 9 months, both in the high yield note and also the Labro working facility. We were able to maintain the same interest levels for those two facilities, but we had to obviously pay commitment fees in order to do that, which is very understandable. So when we think about the $12 million equity raise that we have commitments to date, some specifics on those numbers, 10 million of that 12 million is coming from Labro. Martin Anderson, our largest shareholder today, that owns about 35%. 5 million of that 10 million will be fresh cash, but the other 5 million will be via reduction in the working capital facility from 6 million to roughly $1 million. Of the other 2 million, roughly 1.2 million is coming from the board and management. So all of the board and all of the senior management, everybody on this call, plus a number of others, are all putting in cash into the business. And we received commitments from a number of investors that have added up to $12 million. And today that number is actually rising. So finally, when we maybe look to the next page, please. When we think about the equity offering, and this is a very simple story, when you look at the top part of the graph, you can see that the company has outperformed the markets really since the new management team has taken over and has been executing on strategy, which I think has delivered some very positive results and frankly has been received from the marketplace. So whilst we see a real opportunity today with the drop in the share price as a result of COVID-19, what we believe is that the share price should easily get back to its historical levels quite quickly once things settle down. But more importantly, we actually see substantial opportunities for the share price increasing beyond its current levels and beyond where it was historically at 40p. Because frankly, when you look at the bottom graph, the company today has close to 10 million ounces of gold. And from an EV to resource perspective, we trade the very bottom of our peer set. So as the markets are evolving, and gold is obviously becoming higher and higher, and today hitting above 1,700, we believe investors that want to play into gold, we provide a very attractive opportunity, but also not only from a gold perspective, but because of our strategic ambitions with regards to the M&A opportunity and also the organic growth that we have within our existing profiles. So maybe just to the last slide I have on the next page, please, Patrick. That's further, I think, illustrated with this page. Our share price targets from our brokers is just about shy of 50p, but those share price targets were put in place when gold was around $1,300, $1,400. So you can imagine that at these new levels, our share price targets are probably going to increase by at least 10 or 15p. And that's reflective of all the areas that we are currently adding value to the business with respects to additional mine life at Kapan, opening up the east flank. Also at Tokabash, we'll be continuing the construction and adding additional mine life. And then most notably with Kiziltash, bringing that asset closer into production by defining the processing technology we intend to use. So when you look at the current situation between what COVID-19 has done with the organic profile of the business, we believe that the equity offering today provides a very attractive entry point into the story of Chaarat. So with that, maybe I'll turn it back over to Artem for some concluding remarks.
Thank you. Next slide, please. So why invest now is because primarily all the management that we put in over the last 2 years, 400 years of mining experience, we all are investors. Today, we believe the company is massively undervalued and provide a very strong growth prospects, both organically and through M&A. As you can see, we are actively managing our balance sheet. We are working proactively with all the anti-crisis measures one can think of. And we believe that Chaarat will emerge from these times as a much stronger company. And that's a company one wants to be a shareholder. And I certainly very happy that I'm investing today, as well as my colleagues. So great story. We firmly believe in that. Chaarat will be one of the leading gold companies in our territories, and we're not going to stop for the virus. We're going to take advantage of the opportunities presented. So thank you very much. Back over to Patrick for Q&A.
Yeah, thank you very much, Artem and Chris, for the presentation. I think it was quite a useful overview and also good insight on the race we're currently undertaking. I just want to emphasize again, you can ask any questions by using the raise your hand button, and you can also use the Q&A section where you can type questions. We already received 3 questions, so I'm gonna take the first one, and then I also see that we have already a couple of raised hands to continue. But maybe the first question, which was from an anonymous attendee, have you plans for M&A processes in Armenia, and as there are several gold project developments? So basically, if we are looking into Armenia for further growth, Artem, you can address it, or I can address it.
Thank you, Patrick. Our vision is to have 3 operating clusters. The first cluster is in Central Asia, where we are in Kyrgyz Republic, and will expand along Tanshan Gold Belt into eventually probably Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan. And certainly this is the area where we are actually looking for new opportunities. Second area of our presence is in Armenia. Very exciting country from a geological perspective. Also mountains, as you can see behind Daryan background. This is Armenia, so most of our countries of presence beautiful mountain jurisdictions. And yes, there are some very interesting projects in Armenia where we are currently evaluating. And so possible area for non-organic growth is the Russian Far East, which is also massively underexplored. We are currently actively looking in all 3 directions. Thank you.
Thanks, Artem. There's also one question coming in regarding the impact of the gold price on both assets, actually. So we have already on the Tulkubash slide in the presentation as earlier, we had like a sensitivity on from 1400 to 1600. Obviously the gold price has a large impact, but maybe one of you want to comment on the impact on Kapan and on Tulkubash.
Chris, please.
Sure. Thank you, Artem. So look, I think as you're seeing, the gold price is obviously having a massive impact to the business. Patrick highlighted the impact For Tulkubash, which we see obviously as increasing cash flows by about $20 million at today's levels from what it was at the feasibility study. With regards to Kapan produces 55,000 ounces of gold equivalent. It actually produces a zinc concentrate and a copper concentrate. So with the gold price increasing where it is today, it's going to add, it's probably around $5 million of potential EBITDA to the business. But I think the one point we need to possibly consider is that copper and zinc also play an impact to the EBITDAs, which could have a negative impact, and those numbers actually have come down. But all else being equal, year over year would be about a $5 million increase in EBITDA at the existing gold levels that we see today.
Great. Thanks, Chris. Okay, then we have a live question from Justin Chan from Numis. Justin, I will just open the floor to you to ask the question.
Okay, great, guys. Can you hear me properly?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Just a couple ones. First of all, on if we can just go through operationally at Kapan, you put out some helpful updates on right now so far little impact. Can you just give us an update on site in terms of your shifts and the situation there? What's your current what is your current situation? And I just have one also on COVID. Have you seen any impact on offtake markets and TCRC levels currently?
So Darren, over to you for Kapan update.
Yep, thank you. As far as Kapan operations, actually no impact on the shift cycles at all. We've been monitoring people's temperatures as they come into work, sanitizing, social distancing, so changed the likes of the canteens and some of the ways that we're working in the laboratory. But we've had no cases of COVID in any of our workforce in either jurisdiction, and no impact on our shifts, no impact on operations. And as far as offtakes and delivery of concentrates, we've seen no changes whatsoever. Still managing to sell all of our concentrates with no issues.
Okay, thanks. And have you seen any changes in TCRC levels? I've observed some impact in the zinc market, probably not so much COVID related, but just in Q1 this year.
Maybe I'll take that one, if that's okay. So on our offtakes, we have locked in terms for the remainder of the year. But you're right, the zinc TCs have been moving because of some of the supply disruptions that have happened in South America. But for us, look, we don't sell a lot of zinc, but those RTCRCs are firmly locked in for the full year.
Okay, and that would be contained within the 5 million EBITDA guided, or 5 million EBITDA number that you mentioned.
Right. Yeah, that number it doesn't impact any changes to TCRCs.
Okay, great. Just on Tulkubash and the sort of the timeline there, and I realize markets are now a little bit, debt markets are hard to forecast. As you see it now, I guess, what is your current sense of timeline? And is this year going to then be primarily about Kapan operations and more just waiting to see on debt markets, or do you have, I guess, can you give a sense of how you view this year, realizing that a lot can change?
Yeah, I'll start and I hand over to Chris on the project finance update. We are not pausing on any of our activities, whether it's internal growth or external growth. And that's one of the key messages we wanted to say today. And in very much the same manner, we are progressing on Tulkubash. We have equipment on the site. Our subcontract and minority owner in the project, Chiftai, just before the lockdowns and a new shift of people, 20 people from Chiftai on the site. They are working at a slower pace because we have less people than usual, but we're cleaning the roads, we're working on the leach pad, etc. The next key milestone for this project is obviously completion of the project finance. Over to Chris on that.
Yeah, Justin. So look, with regards to Tokabash, it's just a slowing down from moving the first gold pour from next year into 2022. And that was borne out from two items. One was the supply chain disruptions where we would have trouble bringing equipment in from Turkey, but also very much a slowing down on the financing, but not necessarily stopping. You can imagine with COVID-19, banks put basically new lending, in some cases on hold, or have slowed it down. We're dealing with development banks that are more probably agnostic or less immune to the current situation compared to commercial banks. Many commercial banks are very much triaging their entire books to decide what they do in the future. So we're still working and progressing with the development banks. We have a number of term sheets in place. We're in the process of formulating the full syndicate and moving into detailed DD and hopefully documentation. But just the reality with how banks have now reacted to the current situation, it would be unrealistic to think that we would close something in Q2 or early Q3, and therefore believe that the right realistic timing for closing the project finance will be towards the end of this year. And when you put that with the supply chain, it all leads to the project being pushed out about 6 months. But nothing has effectively stopped us from the project finance. It's just slowed down a bit. But I have to say, every week is changing. People are ready to get back to work. And the number of discussions I've had this week around the project financing, I'm almost getting back to the same levels around activities that we were before COVID-19, but we're not there yet.
Okay, thanks. And the last one for me, I appreciate it might be a delicate question, so I'm willing to be reasonably open-minded about the answers. But just on Shiftai, I'm just trying to understand, I guess, how COVID affects them, both in terms of ability to mobilize people to country, but also, I guess, to what extent, as their JV partner, are you aware of? Do they have any? I guess what is their liquidity situation? I know there's a sizable outbreak in Turkey, so I'm just wondering, I guess, the bank situation there and liquidity and ease of capital movement, in addition to the people movement question I kind of mentioned at the start.
Well, let me start on that, and then I'll pass over to Darian for update on day-to-day operations that our Shiftai partners are currently undertaking. We have full commitment from Shiftai as our partner. We have 33 pieces of equipment on the site. We have 20 people from Shiftai on the site in Kyrgyz Republic. They are working now as we speak and will continue to do so. Given the border closures, we will not be moving new equipment into the country until the lockdowns are lifted. So there is no question of requirement for any new commitment. From what we understand, speaking with our partners, they feel comfortable about where they are at the moment. There is no panic. We're working steadily with them, and we are grateful very much for their continuous commitment as a partner. Darian, anything else to add?
Oh, you answered it very well, Artem. On the ground situation, the work is continuing. We're able to use the Turkish guys that are still there. We've seen a slight disruption around some of the local employees, but that's likely to recover within the next week or two. Kyrgyzstan has taken a very severe stance on lockdown and social distancing, and that has impacted our ability to get local workers. But as Artem mentioned, we were able to bring in the Turkish guys just ahead of any of the restrictions. And border-wise, very difficult to get equipment across. And so collectively, we took the decision not to try and push and get stuff stuck. No point in mobilizing and not being able to move. But certainly on site, we have good work continuing. And we should be able to pick up the pace now as the spring weather really kicks in. Warmer weather, drier weather, so much easier to move materials around the site.
Okay, great. Actually, sorry, I just have one more. Sorry to everyone else who's got questions. I promise I will free the line. But just perhaps this is one for Chris, maybe Artem, but with regards to local currency price movements, could you just comment on currency in Armenia, Turkey, Kyrgyzstan, and to what extent you're able to crystallize benefit from that? or is that something that tends to take time to realize?
Maybe I'll take that. I think your last point is probably the answer, is it does take time to crystallize. We have seen a significant devaluation in both currencies. We'll see a bigger impact at the Japan operation, but we haven't seen that come through yet. It will as we start to obviously convert our dollars into local currency. Not prepared now to provide guidance onto the exact impact of that number because it is extremely volatile, but it will have a significant benefit. So I would say we're going to benefit across the board from gold price massively, oil prices very much in Kyrgyzstan because that's a very energy intensive business, and also currency. But unfortunately, I don't have the specifics I can give you on the impact of the currency, but that it is very much helping.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot, guys. Thanks for the presentation. I'll free up the line.
Thank you, Justin, for your questions. I will just get you off the line. So yeah, we have just one more question coming in by email, which is basically also referring to the financing talks we had, and I think Chris, you elaborated on it already. But basically, it's about the negative aspects of Corona, but are there also some positive effects? As the gold price is moving higher, and usually investors and banks would also adjust maybe their perspective based on the new pricing environment. I mean, I can comment from my banking background, but Chris, if you want to take it.
Yeah, maybe I'll take it. Look, I think this is obviously one of the reasons why we're doing this equity raise, is that we see that it's a massive opportunity for the markets and investors to invest in gold. I think, as I highlighted in the presentation, there's a lot of good opportunities in gold today. Also, there's lots of gold companies. We believe gold will continue to rise. The world markets are primed for a gold run, if not 1,800, 2,000. We don't think that analysts necessarily have adjusted all their pricing and reflected what the gold companies could look like at these levels. So I think it's pretty obvious that one can do that math themselves. But I think, again, from an investment select standpoint, there's a few different ways to play gold. You can use gold bars, you can buy other large gold companies. But when you look at Chaarat, we offer a very unique opportunity to invest in gold, first and foremost from a company perspective, but secondly, invest in an organic growth strategy, as well as an M&A platform for capitalizing on gold within the FSU markets, which is quite unique, and also I think offers what I call a supercharged way to invest in gold. When you look at the other gold companies that operate in the FSU, their share prices have actually rebounded to post-COVID-19 levels because of their the way that they play against the currencies. We haven't had that run yet, and that's something that we expect to see. So, explaining a little bit about what we see in the run, I believe that we will be able to participate, and our share price moves quite a bit once things start to settle down.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Yeah, and I think also the dollar strength, right now can also play in favor. I mean, usually you would see a different approach from the dollar. Getting a bit weaker, it would also support gold. But also I think from the bank's perspective, the price tags they are using will also be adjusted. And that should also be more attractive for them in the coming discussions. I have one more question coming in, maybe to Artem. It's just about how the Armenian government is supporting Chaarat as a foreign investor. So maybe, Artem, if you can elaborate on that.
What we believe very strongly, that most important support for the stability of our operations in either country is a support from the local communities. And as I hopefully have indicated in the presentation earlier, we are working very much in partnership with our local communities, both in Kapan and Armenia and in Chatkalbali in Kyrgyz Republic. And this is a basis for the support in each country. It's a partnership with the local communities. Armenian government is doing what they can now in the current situation. We have not requested any specific support from either government in either country. In fact, we are working to provide our support by buying tests, by buying lab tests, by providing food, by providing sanitizers, as believe this is our duty to the local communities in each country, and this will be beneficial for us going forward. We do not see any specific support required for operations in either country. We enjoy excellent relations both at the local community, at the local government level, and at the federal government level in each countries, and we are happy with the situation in both countries.
Okay, thanks, Artem. I think we get one more question, and then I would kindly invite other or all participants to ask questions, by email, as you've seen in the details after your registration. So the last question for this call would be if we see from further funding interest from government-like bodies like EBRD and others, based on also the central bank's movement, to basically flood the markets further. So if we see increased interest, and I think we touched base on that, but Chris, if you can maybe just repeat a couple of sentences, that would be great.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're talking about interest within investing into Chaarat. Wasn't quite clear.
For project finance as well, and so on.
Yes. So look, I think as we highlighted, we are seeing interest. We've always seen interest. Again, there's not that many opportunities to invest meaningfully in Kyrgyzstan or even Armenia. So as we've looked to raise project financing, we become the poster child for investments within these countries, as we're a very well-established UK listed entity and with the highest governance standards. So therefore, we do see quite a few opportunities, but it does take time. And we are very much looking to align ourselves with strategic partners that benefit the business in the long run. So as we look to select banks for Tokamak, also in the back of my mind thinking about Kiziltash and how we looking to work with development banks that have abilities to provide value to our business, and we'll continue to evaluate those. So we see that trend continuing, and it only continues every year as people understand what we're doing, and they've seen very much how we've added value within the countries we operate.
Great, thanks. I think that is a good ending note. So I'd like to thank all participants for joining our webcast today. As I said, feel free to channel any questions that you may have in addition through our emails in the invite. Thank you all for joining. Have a good day, and stay safe and well, and talk soon. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.